Order. We now move on to Camp Ashraf, Mr. David Amis.
Now, my honourable friend in the House will be aware that on the 8th of April 2011, 2,500 Iraqi armed forces, following direct orders from Nuri al-Maliki and at the behest of the Iranian regime, using 140 armoured vehicles, carried out a vicious assault on Camp Ashraf, home to 3,500 Iranian dissidents, members of the People's Mujahideen Organisation of Iran, including 1,000 women. Now, I want to take this opportunity, Mr. Scott, to add my voice to the international condemnation of this absolutely brutalist, callous attack, a military assault against defenceless, unarmed civilians, which led to the death of at least 35 residents, including 8 women. The majority of them were in their 20s, and a further 350 were wounded. Of the 35 killed, Mr. Scott, 32 were shot in the head, chest or abdomen. 3 others were deliberately run over by Humvees and other military vehicles. At least 225 of the 350 injured suffered gunshots by the Iraqi forces. Now, the April the 8th attack is not over. Iraqi forces are now amassing inside the camp, and several Iraqi engineering battalions have completed a 6-kilometre-long embankment on the northern edge of Camp Ashraf's main road. Malcolm Smart, who is the director of Amnesty International's Middle East and North Africa programme, has stated that given the nature and scope of these new military installations, we're very concerned what Iraqi security forces may now be planning. So I strongly urge the government to convey the demands, which I will include in this speech, to the Iraqi government and its armed forces to stop any form of violence now, to stop aggression and attacks, especially using live ammunition against these civilised, unarmed refugees, and further to immediately withdraw all of its armed forces from Camp Ashraf.
Friend, give way. Can I thank my honourable friend for giving way? Does my honourable friend believe, as I do, that the Iraqis simply cannot now be trusted to be taken at their word to uphold human rights in Camp Ashraf, and that the government not only needs to act, but should act under international law as we now know it?
Well, I absolutely agree with my honourable friend, and I would go further to say that I am very, very disappointed with the American government's role in all this matter. I am very, very puzzled about a number of issues which I will come to shortly in my speech, but I agree with my honourable friend on the point which he made. I must emphasise that the Ashraf residents have been residing in the camp for 25 years and have built a desert patch into a small town using their own resources and money. The receipts for all the expenses still exist. Now, as far as the Iraqi government's position on the attack is concerned, Iraqi officials claimed that only 3 residents had been killed and no live ammunition was used during the attack. However, I would refer the House to the numerous footages posted on the YouTube website and aired by international television stations, which clearly show Iraqi forces indiscriminately shooting at and running over unarmed residents. The United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights, in a statement condemning the attack, further confirmed that of the 34 killed, and I quote, most were shot and some appear to have been crushed to death, presumably by vehicles. Simply put, an unarmed civilian population was slaughtered to death. And I will be giving my honourable friend the Minister evidence, photographic evidence of those who've been injured in this disgraceful attack. The Law Society's Human Rights Committee confirmed in a statement condemning the attack that in footage of the attacks, Iraqi security forces are actually seen opening fire on unarmed residents while others are ploughed down by heavy military vehicles. The United States of America State Department, in a statement on the 8th of April, said, "This crisis and the loss of life was initiated by the government of Iraq and the Iraqi military." Well, that's all well and good, Mr. Scott, but what are they doing about it? And why was there no assistance given by the hospital, which could have tended all these injured people? This attack is the second time that the Iraqi government has resorted to using live ammunition and violence in a brutal attack on defenceless and unarmed residents.
Honourable gentleman for giving way, and of course I also share very much his sense of appall and horror at the activities that are going on in Ashraf. I'm hearing all sorts of horror stories that actually a terrible offence against crimes against humanity. But I'm also concerned, and I wondered if the honourable gentleman might be coming to this. I apologise if he is, but I'm very, very concerned about the treatment of the wounded. Already the ones that are wounded, sick and injured, because it's another example of inhumanity to neglect people who are sick. Wounded can be non-participant anyway, in any shape or form, and I find that appalling. And I wondered if I've no doubt that the honourable gentleman does have this in mind, but I don't want the opportunity to go by and not raise it.
It is crystal clear that the Iraqi government neither has the intention or capability to protect Ashraf residents. It is far too weak a government with many Iranian proxies in their ranks. At the end of the day, they are not reliable for providing proper protection for the residents in accordance with international law, and it would be very naive for anyone to claim otherwise. Therefore, on behalf, Mr. Scott, of the majority of backbench members of Parliament, and on behalf of 200 members of the other place, I very much urge our government to call on the United Nations to take the responsibility of providing protection for the camp and ensure that the rights of the residents are not violated, and further that it station a permanent monitoring team at the camp. In order to avoid any further loss of life or violent attacks, the Iraqi government, I think, should immediately withdraw its armed forces from the camp, which is an unarmed civilian zone. I demand that an international fact-finding mission, rather than one formed by Iraq, which was responsible for the brutal attack, be formed to carry out this task by the UN, so that the perpetrators of this crime against humanity, who ordered and carried out the killing of unarmed civilians, are brought before international courts and face justice. I have a list of 11 critically wounded Ashraf residents, which the honourable member has alluded to earlier, who could lose their lives, and I will provide my honourable friend the Minister with this list. So the 4 points that I wish my honourable friend to reflect on are, first of all, that our government demand of the United Nations that they take responsibility for providing proper protection for Camp Ashraf and to set up a permanent team in the camp. Secondly, the government should also demand that Iraqi forces immediately leave the camp and halt all further such attacks and aggression. Thirdly, I hope that the United Nations would form an international investigative mission for the perpetrators of this crime to face justice. And finally, that the United States of America urgently provide medical assistance to the many people who are injured.
Thank you, Mr. Scott, and it's a pleasure to serve under your chairmanship. And I'd like to begin by thanking my honourable friend for securing this debate and for his courtesy in sending me a copy of his remarks in advance. I know the situation of the residents of Camp Ashraf is important to him and many members of this House and also the other place, and I'd like to thank also other colleagues who are present who've made their contributions to the debate and expressed their concern. The recent incident which my honourable friend has made the base of his speech is a matter of great concern for the United Kingdom government and others. The government has closely followed events at Camp Ashraf for some time. Staff at our embassy in Baghdad have made consular visits to Camp Ashraf to inquire about the welfare of those who might be entitled to UK consular service or protection. The last of these visits to Camp Ashraf by embassy staff was on the 16th of March this year. We believe a small number of residents there have some connection to the UK, though none have yet come forward to request consular assistance. In addition to those consular visits, we do hold regular discussions with EU and US colleagues and with the government of Iraq about the situation at the camp. It is a situation that poses complex challenges, and as I'm sure honourable members appreciate, there are no easy answers to something that has lasted a long time and which is very far from clear-cut. But along with our EU colleagues, we believe that using force is not the way to resolve the situation at the camp, and I shall speak more clearly about that in a moment. It is, however, the government of Iraq's responsibility to respect and protect the human rights of its residents. As I've said, Iraq is obliged to treat residents of the camp in accordance with Iraqi law and international human rights treaties to which it is a party. But turning to the events of the 7th and 8th of April, we and internationals have been and continue to be active in calling on the government of Iraq to stop the violence against residents of Camp Ashraf. My honourable friend was good enough to mention the statement that I made on that date, but I think it bears repeating and placing in hindsight, if I may, Mr. Scott. The UK government is disturbed to read reports that a number of civilian residents have been killed and many more wounded at Camp Ashraf yesterday. I absolutely applaud, this statement came out from me, I absolutely deplore any loss of life. My sincere condolences go out to the families of those involved. The Iraqi government has provided us with assurances on several occasions that it will treat individual residents of Camp Ashraf in a humane manner, act in accordance with Iraqi law, the Iraqi constitution and its international obligations. We urge the Iraqi government to uphold this commitment. Our ambassador in Baghdad has been expressing our concerns to the Iraqi Ministry of Foreign Affairs at the highest level. We call on the Iraqi government to cease violent operations in Camp Ashraf immediately and to ensure that the residents have full access to medical care, meeting the point made by the honourable gentleman and a number of others. My statement goes on. It is important that the government of Iraq takes immediate steps to calm the situation and ensure that the human rights of residents are respected. We are aware of a request by UNAMI to send a humanitarian monitoring mission to Camp Ashraf as soon as possible. We fully support this request and therefore urge the Iraqi government to quickly grant permission. We call on all sides to engage in a constructive dialogue that can lead to a lasting resolution to the situation. That ends the statement I made on that day. Yesterday, the UN confirmed to our embassy officials that 34 were killed in the incident and over 70 injured. I repeat, our deploring of that situation. The current situation is of great concern to the UK. We remain fully engaged on the issue. We hope that UN missions, including the British Embassy, will also be allowed to visit Camp Ashraf to assess the situation in the near future. We'll continue to work with our international partners to press the government of Iraq to respect the rights of the residents of Camp Ashraf.